Welcome to Powered Up, the podcast connecting industry-leading voices who are energising the future. I'm genuinely excited about today's guest. They bring over 25 years of experience in the energy industry and now lead the organisation that became the UK's first green energy supplier. And it still remains one of the country's most influential clean energy pioneers. They don't just sell renewable power. They build it, they invest it, they've helped define what deep green really means. He's a key voice in shaping where this industry goes next. I'm joined by the CEO of Ecotricity and the Green Britain Group, Asif. Welcome to Powered Up.
Thank you. I'm pleased to be here and looking forward to it.
I am super excited to just jump straight in. Obviously, you've built a career across traditional energy and purpose-led renewables, from large corporate environments into leading Ecotricity in the Green Britain Group. You've seen the system kind of from the inside and made a deliberate shift toward impact-driven leadership. Really keen to hear your thoughts on your journey and what shaped the leader you are today.
Sure. Well, first of all, I started my career at the energy regulator Ofgem, probably about 30 years ago. And at that time, the energy market was really all about protecting the coal mines and protecting the coal industry. I spent 2 or 3 years there, within which the framework of the energy market changed to the kind of trading arrangements that we have now. And I moved to Powergen, which quickly became E.ON, and I spent 10 years there internationally, which was great. And in the early to middle part of that, and towards the end, actually, there was this kind of vision of what the world would look like in 10 years' time. And that vision was based on different strategic thinkers and, what the thought process would be for the next decade or two in terms of whether it was going to be a gas world, a coal world, a renewable world, or some kind of mixture. And, at that time, the renewable world got the kind of least amount of votes, if you like, from senior people, strategic people. And I kind of felt that, in reality, we need to move to a more sustainable planet, sustainable country, sustainable organizations. And I felt really strongly about that at the time and felt that we were moving as a country a bit too slowly towards that. I had an opportunity to meet Dale Vince, one of the pioneers of the green industry and someone who's been an entrepreneur for now 30 years. And hearing his vision of, what needs to happen and what should happen and how we can go about making that happen brought me to Ecotricity 16 years ago now. And it's been one amazing journey, and the next part of it is still to come.
Absolutely, especially through the growth that you've gone through. Because when you first joined Ecotricity, how big was Ecotricity as a business then? Yeah,
so we had about 30,000 customers, about 30 staff, and about 30 megawatts of generation. I remember the threes very vivid. So it's been big, and probably about 30 million revenue. I think I must have said that, but significant growth since then.
Yeah. And whereabouts are you now in terms of growth scale?
Yeah, so as a group now, we have about 1,000 people. We just went over 1,000 people. We've got well over 100 megawatts of generation. We've got over a gigawatt in the pipeline that's kind of ready to build, and we have 200,000 plus customers now. So it's been big growth, and I often reflect on that. It might not be the same as some other companies that have grown, but there's different reasons for that. We've got a very clear way in terms of how we grow and what our message is, which is really, really important, and the ability to continue building renewable generation for our customers and put what we call bills into mills, put the bills of customers into building more mills, sun and other technology. So we're trying to do it in the way that we feel is right for us and for our customer.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think the structure and the environment that you've built at Ecotricity and across the group has demonstrated the impact beyond commercial success. It lies kind of within the people that you're operating with.
Yeah, very much so. A lot of our people join us because of who we are and what we stand for. And they are, passionate to get out of bed and be motivated to come and work here to make a difference.
I mean, that's what we all need as a dream, isn't it? To be motivated to get out of bed on a Monday morning, passion for where you work.
Yeah, very true. Fortunately, I don't have a problem with that.
Fantastic. I would love to know what this journey has taught you about impact beyond commercial success.
It's taught me a lot. When I came here, one of the things that Dale talked about was putting the planet before profit. And coming from a commercial world, just a commercial world, pretty much where it's all about shareholders, couldn't really, fully understand how that concept would come together. And having lived and breathed it for 15 years, I can very much be a real advocate for it, that we have put planet before profits on many, many occasions, in terms of what we decide to do or not do. And of course, we have to make profit to run a company, but doing it from a values-led, principle-based, ethical-based approach, where we do turn things down, even if they are commercial, and try and do the right things over a period of time of like 10 or 15 years, that's actually been hugely successful. So I feel like I've lived it and breathed it, and feel like I can really pass that message on, to others, and hopefully there's more of the same to come in the generations to come.
Fantastic. You've seen kind of from the inside, right from the early of your career through to where Ecotricity's got now. And with Ecotricity, you've built a reputation for being value-led, community-focused, and obviously deeply customer-centric, which hasn't been easy to sustain as an organisation scales. More recently, you've been ranked number one for customer service once again by Citizens Advice. So talk us through what it actually takes to build a purpose-driven business that performs commercially.
Yeah, well, I think first of all, you've got to decide it yourselves as what number one means to you as an organization. And for us, clearly, customers is number one. And that's from the perspective of what we give the customer, but also, and that's not just in the sense of flicking the switch and the light coming on from an electricity point of view with the right bill. Obviously, that helps, but it's more than that. It's creating a purpose for people's lives, and how your energy and the way that you use your energy, and how you are sustainable as a person and as a business, and as individuals, puts the customer right in the heart of it, from a provision of energy to them, but also what you stand for and what kind of energy you're providing them.
Mm-hmm.
Providing kind of 100% renewable energy is one thing, but how we go about that is really important. And getting to number one in the Citizens Advice Bureau rankings, that's happened a couple of times in the last couple of years. It's great. It's a culmination, I think, of putting the customer first. We used to be there years ago as number one, and then we went through various technology changes as the industry's evolved, and at times that's been challenging from a migration point of view, but not without the will of putting the customer first. But sometimes you have to kind of come off that number one position, get yourself in order from a technology point of view, and then get back to the right place, which is what we've done. So I think we've built the fundamentals, built the layers and the foundations, but at the heart of it, customer number one, from a provision of service, but also what sustainability stands for an individual and a business.
Love that. Fantastic. I'd love to know how your values influence how you lead and how you've grown your career.
Yeah, I think it's really important to live and breathe who you are in the organization, and actions are louder than words. So, you hear words like hard work, and that kind of stuff, which should be a standard. But I think really living that moment with your people is really important. Integrity is so important. And then how you are with your people in terms of behaviors and consistency of how you operate, and people seeing how that permeates through the organization is really important. And balancing that with obviously commercial delivery and achieving success that everyone can be a part of is a real important balance to try and bring both of those two things together. I think that's really key for a leader.
That's fantastic. And I'm super keen to know why people development matters to long-term impact within businesses like Ecotricity.
Yeah, people development is, I think, is underestimated. Actually, is fundamental. I've been fortunate enough in my career to have lots of managers that I've had that have really enabled me to focus on my development, and help me on my development. And the long-term impact of that is that I've been able to influence what happens in our organization and the industry by having that long-term and people development from my side. And I
Mhm.
think huge to give that back to younger generation. We have one of our board directors here that came from university, worked through the ranks, went off for a year, came back, and he understands the kind of veins of our organization. And that's a really good example of the huge impact, long-term impact you can have in terms of investing in people and their development. That's just one example, but there's many others like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, investing in people is huge for any business, but as the business grows, how do you embed values across each individual? That it must get harder the more that you scale up.
It's a really good question, because I've been here from the time we had 30 people to 1,000 people, and you have a shift in kind of culture as you grow with, new people that come into the organization. And again, rather than write it down per se, we talk about and we action three key words really. One is engage, the other is enable, and the third one is empower. So when it comes to engagement, I think it's really important to engage with people on a one-to-one basis, when they need it, or whenever it's right. Enable people to do their jobs is so fundamental, because you hear a lot of people in industry that don't quite feel like they're enabled to do their job. And then empower people. Everyone wants to make a difference. Whether it's a small difference or a big difference, everyone wants to make a difference. And if you empower them, that's really important. So those are the three areas that we encapsulate to kind of bring our values across the whole business in a changing dynamic as the business grows. It's been a constant.
Yeah, fantastic. And you mentioned obviously the business has evolved, and it's been something that's had to constantly change when it comes to keeping the values aligned. But what's the biggest challenges of scaling purpose? What have you found?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge for me really is to be brave and courageous. I've used those words before, in what you're doing. And if you really believe in what you're doing, then the values of that will come through from a consistent point of view in terms of your evolution as a company in the growth. And we've really felt that. We've believed in what we are doing. We've stayed brave and courageous at difficult times, and we've seen the real kind of positive outcome of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned that you went through a transition where you lost the top spot. Obviously, the sector's experienced extreme transition over the years and quite a lot of disruption as well. So supplier collapses, you've had price volatility and geopolitical shocks as well. During this period, Ecotricity has grown quite significantly in both scale and ambition, while many others have struggled. Talk us through how you've led through uncertainty and navigated the transformation from that side.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a really interesting time for the industry, quite tumultuous time for the industry, and lots of organizations have, as you said, they've kind of gone bust in that time. We had a period where in 18 months, maybe 30 energy companies went bust. And I think it's about foundations of your company and what you build in terms of foundations and the building blocks. If you've got it's a pretty basic saying, isn't it? If you've got strong foundations and good building blocks, then you've created yourself a really solid platform and base to build from. And that's what we've done over the years. I'm convinced of that. We've had success in the last 5 years when it's been a tricky time, and that's built on a number of things. Yes, good governance and good foundations and good people, and putting all of that in place over the last 15, 20 years, but also strategies, having the right hedging strategy. That's so important in the energy market. Having the right kind of characteristics to be able to come through COVID, for example, being able to navigate our way through the energy market crisis and the cost of living crisis that we've had, but also things like holding our nerve, right? So there were times where we were losing customers, so to some other companies that no longer exist because their business model was effectively a race to the bottom, offering super low prices to customers, which was not sustainable when wholesale prices could be volatile. But we had to hold our nerve. We had to be a little bit courageous and brave in that time. And I think that's important as well. And also, notwithstanding that, the ability to pivot when you do need to pivot and be nimble in the way that you make decisions and change. So I think that's been really important. And of course, having resilience is really, really important. And I think we've got an abundance of that here.
Yeah, Fantastic. I love that. And obviously, without growth, there doesn't come evolution, and energy companies are evolving beyond suppliers more into service businesses, and consumers are becoming active participants in the system. You mentioned the customer is kind of centric for everything that you do. And I think previously you've said homes are becoming the hub for energy. So how do you see the role of energy companies changing as it evolves into the future?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I often talk about that in the context of a smartphone for the world that we live in. So, 16, 17 years ago, there was no smartphone. And if you tell a teenager now that you can't book a train ticket or a cinema ticket or check your bank balance on a phone, they think you're a bit crazy. And I think we're going to go through the same kind of evolution when it comes to energy in the home. So, to give you some kind of example, I guess, we've got around about 30 million homes in the UK, and just shy of 2 million homes have got solar panels on their roofs. As an example, at this moment in time, we did a study about a year and a half ago, which suggested that 17 million homes are suitable for having solar panels on their roofs from a way they're facing and the roof structure. And the other 12 million homes could have a battery in which they could shift when they use their energy. And if we implemented that as a country over the next few years, that would have a significant saving on individual households' electricity bill to the extent of about £500 a year, which is, a significant proportion of an electricity bill at the moment. And clearly the home, in terms of becoming a hub, will have lots of different opportunities to do that. So solar panels being one, battery being another, a very small wind turbine, maybe heat pumps, electric vehicle chargers, where you can charge your car, but also take electricity into your house from your car when you don't need it. And that will make the home a hub for energy. And clearly, from a customer point of view, them being in control of that is going to be really, really important. We've seen it in some other parts of the world where you've got, a much bigger penetration of solar as a percentage of the country, like Australia, for example, where people are taking control of their usage of their electricity in the home in terms of the appliances they use and when they use them from a flexibility point of view. But more important, also their generation. So if you take our country, for example, in the summer, if you've got solar panels on your roofs and you're generating electricity, but you're not there to use it because you're at work, you could store it in the battery, and then with more flexible time of use tariffs, we can use that energy in your home when you come back from the battery, between 5 and 7 in the evening when people put their kettles and showers on. So to answer your question in a kind of long-winded way with lots of information there, I think we'll look back in 10 years' time in the mid-2030s and we'll have seen a big evolution towards a home being a hub for energy, and we'll look back and think, didn't really see that much that was going to happen in that time frame, and we'll be in a very different place, I'm sure of that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's ever evolving, and I think a lot of it is down to educating kind of the customer and the end user, and knowing that you can have hybrid options that's going to generate and influence the power of your and cost of your home, if you like. I know that you've previously spoken about the importance of staying curious, and your position within the Green Britain Group demonstrates your values go beyond just energy technology. Why does curiosity matter so much in leadership today, and what is it that you're doing differently in Green Britain Group?
Well, it's a really good question. I think if you really are driven by values and principles and ethical in the way that you want to approach everything that you do, diversification of that is really, really important in my view. So, if a person's carbon footprint is 80% of it is from energy, transport and food, energy is not the only pillar. There's other pillars in there that are really important. So, as part of Green Britain Group, we've got various other companies that are trying to deliver enhancement on sustainability and bring about a better world in different areas, where it comes to vegan food or a football club or making wind turbines or a mobile phone network that is green and giving back to nature and wildlife. It's really important to diversify. And when I speak to people I've worked with years ago in my career, a lot of them say that it's kind of like a dream to be in a role where you're trying to make a difference in so many different avenues and sectors from a sustainability point of view, but also trying to deliver commercial outcomes from that as well. So yeah, it does feel like you're making a difference, but also feels very compelling and certainly very enjoyable. I can tell you that.
Good, I'm glad. It can be a tough juggle, even when you've shown success like you have through your career history. It can certainly be tough at the top on that side of things.
Yeah, it can, and I think that's what keeps your kind of juices flowing, right? The fact that it's tough and there's no same, very rarely a same day or same week, and it's so different that keeps you kind of, your real engagement in that and trying to find solutions, and also taking them as opportunities.
hmm I can imagine as you've developed your career as well, stepping away from more focused on the commercial side, it's some of it is unknown territory. So you do need to push the boundaries personally yourself. How have you found that?
Yeah, I find it fun, challenging, enjoyable, all the kind of emotions. And I think the great thing about it is, carving out that kind of, or compartmentalizing your time and your priorities to enable that to happen. I think that balance between short term and long term, from a business leader point of view, between operational and strategic, getting that balance right is really important. And that's a constant area of concentration and focus.
When you look back, did you ever envision kind of your influence spanning further than energy? Because obviously you're involved with football clubs and on the diamond side of things as well, which is super interesting. Not many people know about. So did you ever envision that happening?
Yeah, I think I did. Just because, once you've come with a kind of set of principles that were important to me, and I met someone like Dale, and the entrepreneurship in terms of what he brings to the table, and the ability to try things like becoming the first electric vehicle charging network across the motorway service stations in the UK, for example, when there was people were saying, "Hey, why are you doing that? There's no business model for it. There's no commercial model for it." And now
hmm
we could see where that's gone. So a combination of desire, curiosity, entrepreneurship, drive, all those kind of things, and trying things actually is so important. That innovation and trying things are so important. So I did see it, that it was possible, back in the day, but to try and actually make it happen in the way that we try to is exciting, is challenging, and it's also very rewarding because you're doing some really, really challenging things. So to take your point on the diamonds front, we make diamonds from taking carbon from the atmosphere, using green gas, and using and lab growing those diamonds with a view to selling them as jewelry, for example. And we've kind of done that, which has been just a fascinating experience in itself.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can
Yeah.
imagine. I didn't even know it was a possibility until I heard about what was going on at Green Britain Group. So
Yeah.
it's truly insightful. You obviously are delving into lots of different areas in renewable energy. Why is it so important that leaders must look beyond their own sector?
Innovation comes from different sectors at different times. And for a company to be able to scan the horizon and understand what's the right thing from an innovation point of view for their company is really important. And it involves lateral thinking, and that I think benefits the company, but also benefits UK as a country. And it will have a macroeconomic impact positively if all industries and all leaders did that. That's my honest opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you've demonstrated that extremely well with the different areas that you're operating business in at the moment. But are there any risks if businesses stop learning, if they stop pushing boundaries?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we talk about technology becoming obsolete, don't we? And I think there's probably obsolescence that comes from an organization not learning, if that's a thing. And it's probably a slippery slope, right? If people get cadent in their thinking and their approach, then eventually they'll be taken over by more forward-looking organizations and people. So I do think there's a risk if organizations stop learning.
Do you think that plays part into what happened a few years ago in terms of the disruption in the industry? So when there were supply collapses, etc., do you think people were just too narrow with their thoughts?
Yeah, I think there was a combination of factors. We had the factor around the price volatility that I mentioned about us being linked to international markets. But I think maybe people didn't really have the forward thinking of what could happen to their business if something like that happened. So
Hmm.
it's slightly different, but it's very similar. If you're not scanning the horizon to understand what external impacts could have on your business model, that's probably a little bit of a lack of foresight, and the impact of that being so profound that it can actually end your business um, if you're not doing those things right.
Talking on the challenges side of things, you've obviously seen the energy system from every angle. So inside big energy, within regulation, and now leading one of the UK's most established green energy groups. So that gives you a rare, honest perspective on how the system actually works. From where you sit, it's not just technology that's obviously holding us back to progress in the future. It's the structure of the system in itself. So what's fundamentally broken in today's energy system that could help us in the next 10 years moving forward?
Yeah, there's one key one for me, something that we've been lobbying about, and I know Dale has been lobbying a lot about, is the way that our industry currently works from a rules and frameworks point of view. And I don't want to go into the detail of the complexities of it, but effectively, we're an island. Britain is an island, and we should be energy independent in our view, because it has such a profound impact in everything we do. We saw that from the energy market crisis and the impact that it had in terms of a cost of living crisis that we had a few years ago when when the dual fuel energy bill got to £4,500, and the government had to bail out um, households by putting in £2,000 a year for households until the energy market crisis kind of disappeared to some degree. And the reason for that is that our electricity price is linked to the gas price. And the gas price is driven by geopolitical events that happen globally. So, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the war in the Middle East, those kind of things have a significant impact on the oil price, which then translates to the impact on the gas price, which then for us in the UK impacts our electricity price.
Mhm.
And it's because of the way the market's structured. So currently, when we all at home and businesses, we use our energy every day, that demand is met by different technologies. So you've got nuclear, renewables, and gas. But the way the market works is that if a gas-fired power station meets that last bit of energy demand that's used by customers, everybody else gets paid that price in terms of generators. It doesn't have to be like that. And the reason it's the rules, the market mechanism thing, and the reason that gas sets a price is because gas-fired power stations can turn on and off to meet demand. And we're linked. The whole point of it is that we're linked to international events. And
Mhm.
as an island, that really makes us at the behest of dictators like Putin, right? It means that we can't be energy independent, and that can't be right. So, we've got a really clear view that if we break that link, when we find a way we think we can do it, break that link between gas and electricity prices, and we'll be independent as a country, and we'll have a much more stable electricity price for our customers in the UK. So that's a big structural change, one big one that we can make,
Yeah, absolutely. Not a tiny one in any shape or measure.
but a
But
very impactful one.
yeah,
Yeah.
100%. Has the descaling of using coal had much impact at all over the last few years?
Yeah, so the last coal-fired power station, Ratcliffe, which I know very well, closed a year and a half ago. So we have no more coal in our mix. That's a great bit of progress. That's certainly helped from a environmental point of view in terms of reducing the carbon emissions from fuel use in the UK. But I wouldn't say it's had a massive impact in terms of pricing because of the gas issue that I've just explained.
Hmm. Okay, fantastic. Well, here's hoping over the next couple of years we can decentralize ourselves from overseas affairs. But obviously, the energy transition and the systems changing super fast, and that's decentralization, digitalization, consumer participation, all encompassed within it. What do you believe will fundamentally change over the next decade? Is it one or all three, four of those areas?
I think everything has to change for the better, and there's no time like the present. So I mentioned the market structure thing, but there's also the grid.
Hmm.
So the grid is currently has been designed post World War II for, maybe two dozen power stations. And as we know now, we have lots of wind generation, lots of solar generation on the grid, and the grid is creaking. To put it in a very simple context, there's not enough capacity on the grid. It needs a lot of upgrade work. It's going to cost a lot of money, and the government has a strategy to look at a spatial plan to see how we can do that. That needs to be optimized. It's really, really important that we do that. And then, of course, planning. Planning needs to be much more conducive to building more renewable energy. We have the cheapest form of renewable energy in wind and solar. There's much more we can achieve. The government talked about doubling onshore wind and quadrupling ground-mounted solar. I'm not sure we've seen enough happen because of grid, actually, in the last couple of years. So there are some big projects out there, but they have a long dates from a grid point of view. And then, of course, as you say, decentralization is so important. And I think the market's going to emerge for decentralization across the next, year, 2 years. There's already strides made by lots of organizations. I'm a big believer that we have that happen between local communities and top-down government.
Hmm.
So there needs to be a combination of those two things to happen to enable it to happen properly.
Yeah, that makes sense. And you touched there slightly in terms of grid. We've just recently had the announcement regarding grid reform. How many more years do you think it's going to take in order for us to progress to where we need to get to? Because obviously targets are being pushed back from 2030, 2035. What's your expectations on that side of things?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, a lot of the projects that we're bringing to the table, we're getting grid dates of mid-2030s, which is a decade away. And if we want to achieve our carbon emission targets, that's too far away. One of the things that the government has been doing through the system operator is pulling together a spatial plan of what the grid looks like and what needs to be done. And I'm quite hopeful for that because that's taking a bit of time. And I just heard that it's been extended a bit longer. And that's okay as long as it's done really well. One of the things that often happens is there's too much of a short-term focus in terms of quick fixes, and that doesn't lend itself to a better long-term outcome. But if we can get this spatial plan right and we can invest in it in the right way, then the queuing system for the grid can be better managed and administered, then I can see that there is hope and we can bring some grid dates forward with that investment and with that change in the process. And we'll be able to get much more renewable energy in the system in the next 5 years or so. And if we can do that, then I think that will make a really big difference.
Absolutely. On the flip side, is there anything that concerns you most if we get it wrong at all? Will it just be the extension of pushing back targets again?
Yeah, very much so that. But my worry is more that if we don't get it right in the next few years, then it would put us a decade or so behind. So there's a real push to get it right in the very short term in terms of policy and those big decisions.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Where's the biggest breakthroughs in the renewable energy industry? Where do you think they'll come from?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think we'll see certainly more technology. And when I talk about the home being a hub, that would be mostly renewable energy. And I think it's really a lot of it is about technology and data. So if you think about smart meters that we talk about quite often, about 2/3 of the country have smart meters now. There's a third of the country that still haven't. But for us to have kind of the customer to be in control of their energy on a within day basis, data becomes so important. And there's something coming called market half hourly settlement, where the market will be kind of administered on a half hourly basis that will enable much more fluidity and flexibility in tariffs that customers will need to use their smart meters and the technology to be able to take the advantage of those things that are coming. So clearly technology, but technology with education, I think, in terms of how it impacts people's lives is going to be the key.
100%. And I think that's something that's spoken about in the industry quite a lot is the educational piece and the data piece. With AI coming in, do you see that being a huge influence to drive the market forwards a bit further? So that next step?
Yeah, very much so. I think, when it comes to tasks being performed differently, made easier, or even new technology that will bring us a breakthrough in terms of the way we do things, and bringing new things to the table in terms of how we do them, like optimize your energy on a day-to-day basis, will all be massively enhanced, I think, through AI and other data advancements over the course of the next few years.
100%. And what excites you most about the road ahead?
Well, I think we've got a really clever young generation wanting to do the right thing. Um, when I speak to a lot of youngsters, they want the planet to be more sustainable. They want to live in a positive environment. They do good things already for, their lifestyle. And I think we have got this clever young generation that want to do the right thing. I just think it needs harnessing, like always in most things. And if we can get that balance right of utilizing their willingness to make a difference and harness that the right way, then that really excites me about what's ahead over the next few years.
I love that. That's amazing. Do you think there is the right opportunities for the younger generation right now, or do you think there's anything that needs to change moving forwards?
Yeah, I think there's a bit of a gap, mostly in terms of, I've read quite a few articles around, the education system, certainly at school level, and then kind of college or A level or BTech level or apprenticeship level, and then university, and then going into the workplace. The type of jobs that are in the workplace are evolving all of the time, primarily due to technology and the
Mhm.
advancement of various learnings that people are finding all of the time from a scientific or a technology or, even a way of doing things point of view. And I think there's a bit of a gap. But that can be certainly harnessed through the right apprenticeships and the right courses and that kind of stuff. But I just think there's normally a bit of a lag, right? And I just think that we need to cover that lag to cover that gap between that education piece and what's needed in the next 5 years. But I'm confident it can happen, and it will happen.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, like you say, it's definitely one of the most exciting factors of the future is the next generations that's coming through. I think you've encompassed it all extremely well over the short time that we've been talking, but you're pretty much echoing the same as every leader in the sector. Everyone's pushing towards the same targets, whether you're developing solar projects, if you're doing EV charging, if you're building wind farms, it's the same goal ultimately. It's been absolutely fantastic to have you as a guest, Asif, and for you to share your insights. We have one final question for you to leave our listeners with, and that is, if you could leave our listeners with one thought to help power up the future, what would it be?
Well, for me, it's a really big thing about future generations. And I have this saying that we don't inherit the planet from our ancestors, and we borrow it from our children. So, from a motivational point of view, I don't think there's anything more that we can bring to the table from a motivational point of view. And we need collaboration for that to happen. Would be my one last point to you in terms of the podcast.
I appreciate that. Thank you
Yeah.
very much. Well, it's been exceptional to have you here. If anybody would like to check out the work of what you're doing at Ecotricity and the Green Britain Group, what direction should we put them in?
Well, we're across social media, so LinkedIn's a big one for me personally that I use. As the company use it as well, and then we're also on X and Instagram, and obviously our website as well. So all of those.
Awesome. Fantastic. Well, we'll look forward to keeping an eye on the exciting projects that you've got coming up. And once again, thank you so much for being a guest.
Thank you.
For everybody else listening at home, we'll see you on the next Powered Up.